was Desperados 3. So Desperados 3 is made by Mimi Me Games. They are also the same people that made Shadow Tactics, Blades of the Shogun. So if you have played that one, you're probably really going to enjoy Desperados. And if you've played Desperados, you're probably really going to enjoy Blades of the Shogun. So I would definitely recommend, if you like one, checking out the other. They are published by THQ Nordic, and the game was released in June 2020. So I had actually, and also it's available for PC, Mac, Linux, PlayStation, and Xbox. So there's quite a few places you can pick it up. So I had definitely had my eye on this game for a very long time just because I had played Shadow Tactics and I really enjoyed it. So I was really hoping that they would come out with another game, and they came out with this one. Now, there is a Desperados 1 and 2, but their gameplay is a little bit different. So this one is basically closer to Shadow Tactics. It's a stealth game. So basically what you do is you have control of certain characters. There's 5 in total, but depending on the level, you might only have access to 2 or 3 or all of them. It just depends on the level. And as you go through, then you can basically, it's kind of like an old Metal Gear Solid, as I've described it before. You have your enemies, you can highlight them, it'll show you their view cones. Their view cones come in 2 distances, a solid part of the cone and kind of a striped part of the cone. And if you're in the striped part of the cone, they can see you if you're standing and running, but they can't see if you're crouching. In the solid part of the cone, they can see you no matter what. And then, of course, you can hide in things like bushes or hide behind barrels or all these other things. So using this, you basically have to navigate a level, get your way through it, solve some sort of puzzle, or, it could be anything from uncover some secret documents that you have to get access to, or maybe there's a certain guy that you have to take out, but you don't know which guy it is, so you have to steal information from different characters. So things like that. And then, it's really fun. It's got a little bit of replayability in that there's usually more than one way to approach a problem, usually more than one path you can take through the level. Not usually more than 2, but, sometimes it gives you a little bit of variety there. It also it has bonus levels. So once you've beaten the game, you get some bonus levels, and a lot of those are just really fun. They just don't really take themselves too seriously. An example is in one level, you basically have this little rail cart, and on the rail cart, there's a Gatling gun, and basically your objective is to kill everybody in the level. And so you're just pushing this cart along, get into a good position, take out everybody in the area, push it into the next position. So that's really fun. There's a level where you get to play as a dog, a chicken, and a cat. And so basically you have the abilities of a dog, a chicken, and a cat, and you have to help a guy out. So that sort of thing. So there's a lot of fun with it. And I just overall really enjoyed it. The characters have different skills. They all have different abilities. 2 of the characters are able to swim. The other ones can't. So if you need to cross water, you need to use those guys. There's bigger enemies that cannot be taken out normally, except for by one character who's the bigger, stronger character. So you're going to need to use him if you need to take out the bigger guys. There's a girl who can be used to distract people. But she can only be used to distract the male enemies, not the female enemies. So, there's a lot of variety into it, a lot of different strategy, multiple ways to complete missions, bonus levels, and now they're out with their DLC. So they've added an extra 3 bonus levels there through the DLC. And on top of that, then now in one of the recent updates, they've added what they call bounty hunter mode, where you can do a level and actually choose which characters you want to complete that level. So that's kind of an interesting touch too, because you can go back and do old things, but you can use different characters to solve it, rather as opposed to the ones that were originally intended to. So I would highly recommend this game if you kind of like puzzle games or you like stealth games. And I would say this one was a real great winner for me. Yeah.
Nice. I'm looking at your gameplay. Sorry. Did you capture this on the PS5 or the PS4 or?
This was captured on the PS5. So the PS4, as far as I know, can only capture in 720p, but the PS5 can do it in 1920. So I got a much better video out of it doing that. So
because it looks
all
really,
this is
really
captured on
cool.
the PS5.
It looks, I mean,
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
yeah, I was gonna say it just looks because I mean I told you I played Blaze of the Shogun. I never finished it, but this looks much. Yeah, I mean in my perspective, the video looks much better and the colors look much better than Blaze of the Shogun.
Um, as far as colors, I think maybe it's just some of the levels that I chose. In Blaze of the Shogun, for instance, if you're in a snowy level, then it's mostly just going to be snow. There's not going to be a lot of color. And in this one, it does have a few kind of deserty levels where the colors aren't so bright. But yeah, I would say it does look a little more detailed. There's one level in Blaze of the Shogun where you have to sneak through the city and then get to the bathhouse, and that one had the bright lights and stuff like that. And this one's more like that one level where there's just a lot more detail to it. And yeah,
Okay.
so
Oh,
and they also have challenges for each level. So, and some of them you cannot do in one go. So you will have to run the levels a few different times. So it does kind of, if you really want to complete it, it does kind of push you into, trying out different things and replaying the levels and all that. So,
very nice.
yeah.
I know, you're playing Valhalla, and we are just talking about this last night. There's lots of new and upcoming games that we'd like to try. Do you think you'll ever get back to this game?
Oh, absolutely. When I was doing the video footage for this, because I this week I knew that I wanted my own footage. I didn't want to have to go through and uh, grab footage online. So I went back and I played it. And when I was playing it, I was just like, oh man, because I remember that I got the deluxe edition, which was going to have DLC, and I saw that they had already gotten the DLC on there, and I was like, oh no, no, I need to go back and play it. So I'm thinking maybe after I finish Valhalla, I'll go through and knock those out real quick, the extra missions, and then I'll move on to something else. Because yeah, this will be a real short, real quick kind of thing. I think it's only 3 missions for the DLC, so
Okay,
definitely gonna go come back to this.
very good. Very, very good. Okay, I mean, I forgot to ask Adam, so you said best of 2020. What, why did this make the cut?
Okay. So the way that I rank when I consider the no people, I like the artistic direction, or I want something fresh and new. So I know some people will dismiss sequels and that sort of thing just because they're like, oh, it's not something new. I want something a newer concept. For me, it's just all about gameplay and fun I had with it, and yeah, just kind of a memorable experience. And is this the kind of game where I'm like, oh man, if they make a sequel, it's an instant buy. If that's the kind of game that I play it, and I'm like, I have to buy a sequel if they come out one sight unseen. That for me is a good, memorable, fun game. So for me, I just had a lot of fun with this one. I do like puzzle games. I do kind of like stealth games. So I just had a lot of fun with it, and I went back and I completed everything, and it wasn't a chore. That was one thing for me is completionist. And sometimes in some games, it's just like, oh my god, I feel like I have to do this, but it is kind of a drag because I've already beat the story, and it's just it's just that one last thing. But in this one, it was definitely a pleasure all the way through it. And when I finished it, it wasn't kind of like good, I'm done. It was definitely I wish there was more. So yeah, that's why for me that was definitely a game of the year.
Okay, very, very cool. I'm gonna move on to my pick. All right, and my first game, I'm gonna have to preface this with that I have not played a lot of games in 2020. So the way I went about this is I've chosen games that maybe they were released earlier on other platforms, with the exception of one game, and but this year they were released in some platform for the first time. And the first game is My Friend Pedro. My Friend Pedro, I played it for the. I saw the trailer. I followed the developer. It's developed by Dead Toast, published by Devolver Digital, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. It is published this year, April 2nd, 2020, on the PS4. It's on all platforms except for the PS5 and Xbox Series X, though they are backwards compatible, of course. My Friend Pedro is a violent ballet about friendship, imagination, and one man's struggle to obliterate anyone in his path at the behest of a sentient banana. And that sounds really crazy, but basically what the game is you wake up. It is a 2D side-scrolling shooting game that allows you to do really cool tricks. You can sort of see it in the gameplay trailer over here, and you get to shoot stuff and do sort of slow motion Matrix style bullet time attacks, and you've got different guns, different levels, different ways to do things, and it's really, really fun, really easy going. I played it, I think at that time I was in my mom's house in South Africa, and whenever I go back to South Africa, I have really, really weird sleeping times. So I'd wake up at like 4 a.m. in the morning, and my mom and my younger brother would like walk out and go to the bathroom, and they'd be like, "Huh, you're awake?" I'm like, "Yep, can't fall asleep." And this is what I would be playing at 4 a.m. in the morning on my Switch, kicking knives into people. It's a really, really fun game, and like Adam mentioned, like if they came out or with Dead Toast, because there's a single guy who made this game. If he came out with My Friend Pedro number two, I'd guarantee I'd buy it for the Switch. This is not the kind of game I would play on a PC, or at least without a controller anyway, because you need those controls. And even with the controller, because my hands are like made out of concrete, it was really, really hard to pull off some of the real, like, fine tricks and stuff. I must have put about 15 to 20 hours into this, and didn't finish it. I do know it's not a long game. I would say at max 25. But there are points where it sort of like requires quick reflexes, requires you really to focus and have a good understanding of where your fingers are, because you've got the triggers, you've got the toggles above the triggers on the Switch. I mean, like a regular controller anyway. Um, but really easy going. It's something I think. Hi Ben. It's something I think middle-aged gamers would love because you can play one level, stop, put it down, play another level a week later. This can sort of be like your fuller game if you're playing a story game or an adventure game. You're like, man, I really need some action. This is the game for you. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's available on every platform except mobiles at the moment, and a really, really cool game. Not quite for everybody, but it's definitely something I feel like the middle-aged gamers would love, just for the fact of being busy and needing to play something for 5, 10, 15 minutes. One level doesn't take a long time. At the most, a level will take you, if you're stuck, maybe 20 to 25 minutes. What do you,
So yeah, so I mean, this is a gameplay footage, or this is kind of
this
like
is
an intro
the
footage.
trailer, but the trailer footage is pretty much how the game actually works.
Okay, so is it like a 3D kind of thing, or
Oh
is
no,
it 2D
2D.
or side scrolling? Okay, the animation looks kind of familiar. Is this from like a popular studio, or is it just a coincidence that it just kind of looks familiar?
I mean, I would say the guy who did this, he probably got somebody to do it. Um, because yeah, that's just the animation for the trailer. The actual gameplay, I couldn't find like good gameplay footage. But the gameplay looks very much in the sort of the same style as Abe's Odyssey, if you're familiar with that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's kind of like that 2.5D kind of thing.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Because I mean, you do move in sort of twist your body in like a 2.5D way, and yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so it's not like a fully animated,
No, no,
kind
no.
of
I mean,
like
if they did this in 3D,
Shantae or
I
something.
wouldn't like it because this feels very familiar or very feels like it works best in 2D. Jesus.
Okay, but I'm saying it's not like a Shantae or something like that, where it's like fully animated, hand
Oh
drawn.
no, no, no,
It's
no, no.
okay.
It's very much computer animated. Like I said, Abe's Odyssey is the best sort of animation style I can think about it. Or
Okay.
comes close to
Now,
resembling.
okay. So from the trailer, it looks like it's a pretty fast-paced game. Would you say this is kind of like a fast, kind of twitchy game, or
No, no,
is
no,
there?
no. I
Okay.
would say it looks like that, but it's what it is. Because I mean, you start off the level, you're not when you start off the level, you're not under pressure to like, oh my God, I need to do this, I need to kill this guy. You start off the level in a neutral place, but you get to see where all the enemies are.
Oh,
And
okay.
the fast twitchy stuff comes to how you want to engage the enemies. It's like, do you kick the frying pan and hit the guy's face and shoot this guy first and shoot that guy first? And when do you spin? Because you do spin to dodge bullets. and you do a spin, and when do you spin, and when do you slow down time, and how do you spread, because you can control your arms independently. So you have to
Oh,
control each arm with each trigger, and it becomes the difficult part that I is one of the things. No game of the year is perfect. The difficult part for me was the balance of saying, okay, how do I engage 5 enemies, 6 enemies, 7 enemies, and who do I kill first? How do I manipulate the controls to do this effectively?
okay. Yeah, it's a shame you don't have gameplay footage because yeah, it seems like the controls might be kind of complex then.
Eh, It's someone who's familiar with the gamepad would be fine. For me, this was probably the third or fourth game I played on the Switch, and it was hella difficult. I mean, controllers are still hella difficult for me.
So is it kind of like a twin stick shooter in a way with the each arm independently, or?
Yes, yes, exactly. I mean, without again, the need for the endless swarm of enemies or feeling the pressure to continuously move around. It's um, another podcast. Gamers with Jobs, they did it really. They phrased it really well. They said it's what it is a shooting puzzle game.
Okay,
Because
that's interesting.
you start off the game and you're like, okay, this is the enemies. This is what I need to do in the environment. This is how I want to approach the level. And you have health as well, so you can die, and I have died a few times.
Only a few.
Only a few, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, it does. Sounds like a lot of fun. I might have to check this one out.
It's definitely a game I would recommend getting on a sale. It's pretty awesome. I think you'd like it.
Yeah, I also really like games that are made by independent developers. You know, it's just kind of the supporting those small time guys and whatnot. Would how long would you say it is about?
It is about oh, 25 hours, 25 hours, because I did
Oh,
look it
okay.
up when I first started playing it. I was in my mom's is like, okay, this is going on and on. I'm like, oh, I'm almost at the end.
Was it this? I'm almost at the end, or was it like I feel like I'm almost at the end, and then nope, nope, nope. There's quite a bit more, and then oh, now I'm at the
So
end, and
I
then
was
there's more.
about 18, 19 hours, and then I looked it up. I'm like, oh, I'm almost at the. By that time, my holiday was over. I had to come back to Taiwan and go back to work.
Ah, okay. All right. Well, with that, I will move on to my next game, which is Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I absolutely love Final Fantasy VII. So I will be entirely honest here. This is probably a bit biased. So, but it was developed by Square Enix. It was developed on, or it was released on March 2nd. It was supposed to be, or at least it was supposed to be. I remember it was released much later than it was originally supposed to be. It was delayed a couple times. It's currently on PS4. It will be coming to the Xbox, or no, it will be coming to PC. I don't know if there's news on Xbox. I think it's coming to the Xbox, but it'll be coming a year late. So it will be 2021 when it comes out on PC and Xbox. Oh, yeah, it is coming out on Xbox. Okay. So this game is a remake of the original Final Fantasy VII, but it is also, in a sense, a reimagining. So, without giving too many spoilers, basically what happens is if you are keeping up with the original Final Fantasy VII compilation, which was Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus, Crisis Core, Advent Children, and the mobile game, which I can't remember the name of at the moment. Then basically, what's happened is in this version of Final Fantasy VII, there the main enemy Sephiroth has screwed up with time or whatever, and events are occurring in the same order that they were originally going to occur, but sometimes decisions that people are making are not going quite down the same way they were supposed to. And so because of that, then these mysterious figures called the Watchmen of Fate or whatever show up, and basically they want to push the game into its original uh, course. So for the most part, it's going to follow Final Fantasy VII. You're not going to notice too many major differences. It might just be something like one character normally was supposed to be in this fight. Something happened to that character where they're not going to be there, and then these things show up and basically make it happen the way that it originally happened in the original. So that was a bit of a spoiler, but I'm not going to go any further into that to tell you what's going on, what's going to be changed, and that sort of thing. But for the most part, the story is the same. It only covers the Midgar arc of the original game, which, if you're pretty fast, I think you could have completed it in about 2 hours or so. So here it's definitely padding that out significantly more. It's exploring new characters. There are older returning characters like Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse who are going to get a lot more screen time and a lot more character development than they had in the original. There are new characters that are, if you actually read some of the extra material from the compilation, like some of the short stories and stuff like that. Some of them I think were only released in Japanese, but there are some fan translations out there. Characters who appear in those show up here. So it does add a little bit of that and whatnot. But yeah, so it's really just going to flesh out the Midgar arc significantly more. And the other big thing is they have moved away from the active time combat or active time battle, the ATB of the original. And the combat now is you have all your characters, you fight using the square button. So if you press it, they'll do a certain attack. If you hold it down, they'll do a different attack. They all have their own special abilities. For instance, Cloud's ability is that he can switch between two different sword stances. So you can switch between a defensive one and an offensive one. Barrett can kind of charge up to do a bigger attack. Tifa can basically charge up her attack and unleash these larger attacks. Eris can do, I don't remember what she does off the top of my head, but he has these special abilities now that they can do. They also have individual abilities, which are usually tied to their weapons. So now, whereas in the original Final Fantasy VII, everybody kind of played the same. It was just what materia you equipped on them. Now they're all going to play quite differently. And of course, they still have materia, so you can put materia on your weapons and on your accessories. And then that's how you get access to magic and summons and other special abilities and whatnot. So what you do is you will fight, and as you fight, if you take damage, if you do damage, and just slowly over time, your bars will grow. And when you hit a certain point, you'll get one full charge, and you can expend charges to use your special abilities and stuff like that. So on the one hand, that was really, really cool, and it was kind of an interesting way to do combat. On the other hand, sometimes it could get really, really tedious because there might be a situation where you want to heal a character and you have to wait until your bar is charged before you can use an item. So if it were up to me, I would have put items would be anytime use, and things like magic and stuff like that would have been on this bar. But as it is, everything's on the bar. So sometimes there are times where it can get a little bit crazy where you're like, oh no, I'm just running around in a circle waiting for this bar to charge before I can do anything because I don't want to engage the enemy because that could get me killed. So but yeah, I mean, overall, if you've played the original Final Fantasy VII and you loved it, you're going to probably get some big nostalgia hits here. I don't know if you might enjoy it because the combat is very different. So I know that some of the fan base was a bit divided on that. Obviously, they are making some changes. They are mostly fairly subtle, but there are a few changes, and I think some of the fan base was a little bit not too fond of that as well. But overall, it's a pretty solid game. It's a lot of fun. I would recommend this for people who are Final Fantasy VII fans who want to, just get more Final Fantasy VII, or people that have never played a Final Fantasy before and just always wanted to try it. So I think we talked about that last time where I was talking about Final Fantasy, and you were saying that I think you were asking about Final Fantasy 15, if that would be a good one to get into. That would be an okay one to get into. I would definitely recommend this one, though, just because Final Fantasy 7 is one of, if not the biggest Final Fantasy in terms of being out there and people being aware of it and knowing what it is. So this would definitely give you a sense of kind of the Final Fantasy history and whatnot. So I would highly recommend this for also new people that have wanted to play a Final Fantasy but haven't quite gotten around to getting into one yet.
So of course I gotta ask this question. Why did this beat out some of the other games you played this year?
Well, most of the games I played this year were actually from last year, so I didn't have a super long list of games that were released in 2020 because I am kind of working through the backlog. So in that sense, I didn't have too many games to choose from anyway. But this one, I mean, like I said, I'm a bit biased. So, Final Fantasy VII is one of my favorite games of all time. So, of course, this would be a game of the year for me,
Okay,
just because
cool.
the nostalgia hits there. But also just because it actually is pretty solid of a game. It's really interesting. A lot of games now are kind of more open world, and because of that, the story can sometimes be a bit disjointed. That was one of the things I was talking about with Final Fantasy 15, was that you have this open world, and I mean, the apocalypse is slowly upon you, but oh hey, let's go look for frogs for this one doctor lady, right? So it can be kind of disjointed like that, and it can kind of interrupt that sense of urgency that you have, because you can just go off the beaten path. Skyrim's kind of the same thing, right?
Exactly.
At any time, unless you're basically in the final dungeon, you can just kind of wander off and just say, whatever, the apocalypse will wait for me. I don't have to force my way through it. So, but in this one, it was really interesting because the way they do the game is they do it in chapters. And so each chapter has its own map, and some chapters will be in the same locations. But because they do chapters, the pacing is actually really, really good, because side quests are regulated to the chapters that they belong to. So you have to complete that side quest within that specific chapter. So some chapters are slower because, at that point in time, there's not too much going on, and characters have a bit of time to kind of walk around and do whatever, and some story development. And other chapters are really, really fast paced. And in those ones, you're not going to have side quests. So because of that, it doesn't interrupt the flow of the game. The flow of the game is done very, very well. Once you've beaten the game, you can go back and play any chapter that you want, which, if I remember correctly, in Final Fantasy 15, you could kind of do the same thing where you could go into specific chapters. But here it works out really, really well because, yeah, you can just kind of go specifically to which part of the story, which was really helpful for me too when I was making my videos, was I could just go to a specific chapter and just run that. And I didn't have to run through the whole game and just pick up a few things. So yeah, the pacing's really, really good. And given how, like I said, we have a lot of games now that are really open world and you can kind of go everywhere, this one had a very tight direction, and it really helped drive the narrative forward in a really good and not disjointed way. So,
I love that description.
yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't have any questions because I mean we have talked about this. This will be the second time, so
Yeah.
it's good to I mean good to know why you chose it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I've always loved the characters, but having those characters now, giving them kind of abilities that flesh them out a little bit more in terms of their, not just their character, but like their fighting style and that sort of thing. So, like for instance, Cloud is a really heavy hitter. He's got this huge sword. It's super heavy. He hits hard, and he's got his two stances. One's kind of more defensive, and one's more aggressive. It kind of really fits his soldier persona. And then you have Barrett, who's he's a ranged guy. He has to sit in the back, but he bombards enemies from afar. You have Tifa, who's just a martial artist, so she's just really, really quick, super fast, builds up her ATB really quickly. So she's really good for if you're trying to, she kind of works well as a lighter fighter because she doesn't do as much damage, but she can build up her ATB really quickly, so you can put some heals on her, stuff like that, and kind of use her as kind of a mix between a fighter and a support. And Eris is just full on support. So the way they have the characters kind of fit their niche works really, really well with their personalities and everything. So
Nice.
yeah.
Okay, moving on to my second choice. My second choice is a game we have already talked about. It is No Man's Sky Origins, or just plain No Man's Sky, because Origins is just an expansion. So I chose this because this has come out to the PS5 and the Xbox Series X when the consoles were released. Of course, with various, improvements and textures and colors and, making good use of HDR if you do have an HDR capable TV. HDR, for those who don't know, is high dynamic range, just makes everything pop more. So what No Man's Sky is, if you've never played it, if you've heard of it, and you just heard the initial bad press when it first came out, it was procedurally generated Star Trek, for lack of a better word. But when it first came out, it did not live up to the expectations. It looked kind of bad. But even then, I mean, I played it when it first came out. I liked it. It was fun. It was a game about survival. It was released by Hello Games. It was released, where am I looking at? Years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And basically, it's a game where you can do anything and be anything you want to be. You can be a trader, you can be a starship captain, you can go exploring and find really cool and interesting stuff. You can be a universal, like somebody who explores. I really enjoyed that when I played the game. I'd go around to different planets and catalog species and feel like a xenobiologist. Um, but it's so many things to do, and it's definitely a game now that looks absolutely beautiful, will make a good use of your new consoles, and definitely something that you should think about picking up if you're into space, if you're into exploration, if you're into survival games. The survival part is not such a big deal anymore, but definitely really cool, really a game that has so much gameplay. My younger brother played it most recently and he loved it. It's definitely a game also very relaxing as well because once you get to a planet you can just spend hours and hours exploring it. Like, okay, I'm done. Let's see, where's the next planet in the solar system? Okay, no, let's go to another solar system. Let's go to another galaxy. Lots of choice, lots of things to do, and I mean, when you get bored being a xenobiologist, you get to be a freighter captain. We get bored being a freighter captain, you get to become a captain of industry. When you get bored doing that, you get to become a space pirate. Whatever you want to do, just go ahead and do it. And finally, you get to play with friends as well, which is what I'd love to do this with, but this is will be on my brothers and I long list of things to do. Or once Ed and I make it big, making YouTube videos, we'll be able to play stuff like this together during the week.
Yep.
So what do you think, Adam? Any questions? Because we have talked about this before.
Yeah, and I have it on the PS5 now. I haven't played the Origins. I guess it's PS2 now, but apparently this is one of the few games that has a PS5 version of it released right now. So when I was looking through the list of games that I had, I noticed that I this is one of the ones that if you have it on PS4, if you do get a PS5, you can get the free upgrade to it.
Nice.
So yeah, no, I definitely. I don't think they have crossplay currently. Hopefully, they do add that at some point, and then of course you can just pick it up on PC and we can still play together. I don't have to get another version of it, which would be nice for me. But yeah, I had it on release and it was kind of bare bones. And looking at what they've done now, this is one of the, in my opinion, kind of real great stories in gaming. I mean, if you look at right now, Cyberpunk is out and CG Project run through the mincer on how not ready that game was
True.
to the point where they are now offering refunds to anybody who wants it. And my the example I always go back to is BioWare with what was it?
Andromeda.
Andromeda, right? And then later on with Anthem, where they had it and then it didn't do well, and they just completely abandoned it, and they're like, whatever, it's gone, right? Now they've announced that there's going to be a new Mass Effect game, but it looks like they're going back to the original, kind of an expanded, expansion of the end of the original trilogy or something. So they just completely up and abandoned what's it, Andromeda, and it. I think a lot of big kind of companies now, they don't really, if something's not successful, they're like, they just move on. And Hello Games, I think, has just really, really, really turned this around. So I think they deserve a lot of credit for just sticking with it and really being like, okay, you know what? We didn't give you guys what we promised, but we're going to give you what we promised. So yeah, I definitely think that it's it's a really great thing. Although I will say that it is quite daunting. I went back after the I don't remember which update it was. I think it was the second one. Was it Leviathan or something? The one where it was the water one. or
I
not
don't,
Leviathan.
because I mean, I played it originally and then I never went back after the updates. That's on my backlog of things to do.
Yeah, I went back after I think it was the second update, and there was a lot that had because that point they had base building and whatnot, and it was a bit daunting. I mean, I ended up getting a freighter, but I was kind of like, okay, what do I do with this? So it is definitely a game that if you're kind of a casual gamer, I wouldn't really recommend it just because there are a lot of things that aren't quite clear from the beginning. So it does take a good bit of time to get used to it and figure out what's going on and figure out the space building and figuring out, how do you do mining? What do you need to mine? That sort of thing. So this is definitely the kind of game where you're going to have to pay attention and spend some time actually learning the mechanics of it. It's not going to be a pick up and play beyond, okay, I can fly my ship and I can get more fuel for my ship. Well, the original one was really much was very much that, but this now, yeah, if you really want to get into some of these really cool features, you do actually kind of have to learn. There's a bit of a learning curve to it. So,
Totally, totally. Now I agree. I still think it's very, very doable.
oh,
Because
absolutely.
in the beginning, it does start you out with, I've heard the most recent update, Origins, does explain everything to you you do have a choice when you start as, if you do want to learn, you can learn, but you can't do a lengthy tutorial. I think it's somewhere around, caps out about 3 hours to explain all the new systems in the game.
Oh, fantastic. Because, yeah, that was one thing that when I went back in, I was kind of like, okay, I remember how to navigate, I remember how to fly, but then I was like, I'm going to do some base building, or I got I actually got a freighter, and then it was like, okay, now you need to install this science module and that science module, and I was like, okay, but what do they do? Like, why do I need these? Um, so it's good that they kind of gave you more of a tutorial thing, and that might be one of the things too. Is it might have been a case of if you're a new player, they might walk you through it, whereas with an old player who's already kind of established, it might just assume that you're already past that tutorial phase, so they don't really walk you through it. So maybe if I started a new game, it would be different.
Totally, totally.
So
Yes, exactly. Okay, and let's move on to your last game.
okay, so my last game is
Not Final
Genshin
Fantasy.
Impact.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I actually didn't. Yeah, it's still Final Fantasy VII. Yeah, that game's never going to go away. No, it's going to be Genshin Impact. And now I didn't play that much Genshin Impact. I basically played when it first came out because I am a sucker for timed events, and there was a deal at the very beginning that if you got to Adventure Rank 20, that you could get you could get a free character. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to get that free character, and I did. But anyway, this is released by MiHoYo. It was released on September 28th, 2020. It's available on PC, mobile, and PS4, but of course, you can also get it on PS5. They did say that they are going to upgrade it, create a PS5 specific version later, but it's not available right now. It is very Breath of the Wild esque in the both aesthetic and exploration. However, gameplay loop is a little bit different because you, instead of having just Link with all of his abilities and breakable weapons and all that, you have different characters, and each character has a different element and is kind of useful for different things. And it really builds the elements. They're done in a really interesting way. Pokemon and a lot of games just kind of usually do the strengths and weaknesses. Fire is good against ice. Ice is good against water. Water is good against fire. They have some sort of cycle going on there. But here they really blend the elements together really, really well. For instance, fire will add damage over time by lighting something on fire. If you hit fire with water, if you hit fire with air, it'll basically cause the fire to grow. And if the ground's on fire, it'll create a larger kind of area of fire, but it'll feed the flames. So it'll do extra damage if you hit a burning character with wind. If you hit them with water, it'll cause evaporate, which will take away the fire but do extra damage. If you hit them with electricity, it'll do an overload attack, which will do a little bit of extra damage. If you hit an enemy with water, it makes them wet. If you hit them with ice, it'll freeze them. So the elements really bounce off each other really, really well. And that's kind of an interesting thing because you can build your team. You get a team of 4 characters, and depending on how you or which elements you put together, there is kind of some thought put into that, and not only which elements do you put together, but which characters do you put together. For instance, some of the characters might be more ranged, and some of the characters are more short ranged, and some of them are healers, and some of them are support, and they all kind of, so you can build kind of your own dream team. However, getting that dream team can be a bit of a chore because this game is kind of a bit of a cash grab. It's a gacha game, so basically what you do is you expend wishes, and your wishes will randomly unlock characters or items. And because of that, there's no consistency in what you're going to unlock. And when the game first came out, this is something I said was I was very impressed that people were giving this a pass, because just last year or the year before, we had this huge loot box, fiasco, uprising, whatever you want to call it, here in the West. And in the East, those sort of things are still quite common to have these kind of loot boxes or these, microtransactions. But in the West, this is not popular. And we totally did away with it. And this game came out, and everyone's like, oh, this is such a great game. It's so wonderful. It's free. Who cares? But now we're starting to see the player base is starting to turn. I've heard news recently that they said MiHoYo's income from this game has dropped dramatically since the initial release, where people, when it first came out, were spending money on the game, and then they realized that some of the drop rates in this game are actually some of the lowest you'll find in any game. I think they said that the chance of getting a 5-star hero is something like 0.6% or something like that. So, in theory, you would have to, they do a pity roll. So if you roll 100 times, they'll give you a free 5-star character, basically. But, at 0.6%, you're only getting a 5-star every 200. So basically you have to roll 100 times just to get, on average, that 5-star character. And given that there are 5 or 6 5-star characters, there's not a good chance that you're going to get the one you want. So because of that, it's kind of turning people against it. And I guess the profits have dropped dramatically. So now they might end up having to change some of those in the future. But yeah, the reason that I really chose this, now when I played it, I had a little bit of fun with it. It was okay. It wasn't a super great game. I definitely had issues with it. The biggest one being that the controls were not intuitive. Basically, every game that I've played, attack is on square. It's on square for Final Fantasy VII. It's on square for Ghost of Tsushima. It's on square for pretty much most games, with the exception of a few games which will put the attack buttons on the R1 and R2, which will put them on the trigger buttons, so that you can keep your thumb on the stick at the same time. But this one, for some odd reason, put your attack on circle, and I have no idea why it did that. It was a really weird decision. But now with the patch, they've added the ability to customize your controls. So that's definitely boosted it up. But the real reason I chose this for Game of the Year was just because of, no pun intended, the impact that it made when it did drop. A lot of people were all over it. It was super popular. It's still quite popular. If you look at a lot of gaming forums or things like that will rank games by how active their forums are, it's still a pretty active community on there and stuff like that. So I definitely think that this game deserves to be at least recognized as a contender for Game of the Year. So
No, I would totally agree with that. Uh, so I mean, it shows as of a month ago, Genshin Impact has 1.5 million players on PS4.
there you go.
And I mean, it makes sense because I mean, looking at this, I've seen the trailer, but looking at your gameplay footage, it just looks absolutely gorgeous. And you make a good point that, and I think this game itself makes a good point. And not only this game, but I mean, this most recently, that you can make AAA free-to-play games.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I can't even say it now. The microtransactions are a bit of a pain. Personally, for me, if they had made it that if they had gone kind of more of a League of Legends route, where you can earn things in game slowly, but you can pay for things, but you can buy what you want, I think that would have maybe gotten slightly better reception. But I think they definitely went with that model that they did because they have, the 5-star characters are significantly more powerful than, or at least noticeably more powerful than the 4 stars. So there is that kind of like, oh, I want that one character. And of course, if they wanted to go kind of a League of Legends route, they kind of have to make every character equally viable. So this kind of gave them the advantage. If they want to have a little more fun and create a slightly stronger character, they can go ahead and do that and whatnot. But yeah, I really do hope they change drop rates and stuff like that, because I'm definitely not the kind of person who drops money on these sort of things. But the fact that it went free to play, and in their defense, actually, if you're just playing through the game, just the story, you can do that with any character. You don't need the stronger characters to be able to get through the game. The stronger characters are only for the end game content, the extra dungeons and that sort of thing. So if you really want to get kind of more competitive and do kind of these the ranked dungeons and whatnot, that's when you're really going to start needing these stronger characters just to beat the game itself. If you just want to play a game and you just want the story and you just want to play it like a single player game, like a Breath of the Wild kind of thing, you could actually do that with just the characters that they give you in game. So yeah, if you're not looking for super competitive and you're not the kind of person that's like, oh, I absolutely want this character, then definitely I would say pick it up, give it a go, check it out. And it's free. You have nothing to lose. So
Exactly. Totally. This is be something else I'd like to play if I ever get a chance at some point.
yeah.
Okay, and let's round it off with my last game.
Okay.
My last game is Hearthstone Duels, which is a new mode for a game that's been out for at least 5 years. I am a big Hearthstone fan. If you don't know what Hearthstone is, it is a collectible card game, very much in the vein of Magic, in the vein of Legends of Runeterra. Um, Geez, there have been so many games since Hearthstone came out that have come and passed by. This game is still around. I mean, it is backed by Activision Blizzard. Um, I love this game and why I think it deserves to be the best of 2020. The Hearthstone team has done really, really well, releasing lots of cool expansions, especially the end of 2019 going into 2020. Every expansion this year introducing new mechanics, new things you can do, making the game more fun, more interesting. And despite the hardcore players be like, oh my god, this is terrible, because there are loads of mechanics in the game that allow you to catch up. So if you're like really struggling against somebody and you get to play this one particular card, that card can actually help you catch up, and it's fun. It's not like if you're playing a regular game like Magic, you're like, oh my god, I'm just totally outclassed by this guy. In Hearthstone, there are catch-up cards or catch-up mechanics, and that's why I love it. But today, the thing I'm talking about is, after years, is Hearthstone introduced a new game mode. It's called Hearthstone Duels. So it allows for even more crazier things and different heroes and different hero powers and treasures and really, really zany things. And this mode is so much more fun than Arena that, I mean, I don't think I'll ever play Arena again. So what it is you get a selection of 4 heroes. You choose a hero, you choose a treasure, and a treasure has some like a really zany effects. Like one is to uh, activate a death rattle. A death rattle is some cards that be like, okay, when it dies, it will do something, which is what a death rattle is. And you have a hero power that allows you to just activate the death rattle even though the card has not died, which doesn't exist in the regular Hearthstone game. But in duels, it does, so you get some really, really cool combinations. And basically, you play up to 12 games, and when you win 12 games, you get huge amounts of gold and cards and card packs. And it's just really fun, really lots of different combinations and things. And it is, to me, something that I think sets Hearthstone apart. It makes it definitely the most accessible card game um, in terms of difficulty. Now, of course, like I said before with my game number one, no game is perfect. There are things with monetization going on. There's a lot of rumors about the new reward system and about the amount of gold you get and what you can actually do as a free-to-play player. But as a middle-aged gamer, if you played Hearthstone before, Now's there's no better time to get back into it. Duels is absolutely fun. Um, you've got two versions of Duels. You've got the casual, where you don't need to pay money. You don't get any rewards, but you just get to enjoy the fun part about it. And you get to play one game, stop, play another game tomorrow, and you can play your run. I'm like, okay. And then after 6 games, you're like, okay, um, I'm not going to be able to beat my next opponent. I can give up, and you can draft a new deck and new cards and stuff. And this game is about drafting uh, as well, but you can use it uses old cards, not the new cards. So if you have old cards, this is what it's going to use. Yeah, this is I played this on stream and people like it, and it's really when it was released, it was the hot thing in Hearthstone, and lots of streamers are still playing it now.
All right. Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder if maybe I should get back into Hearthstone because I haven't played for a really, really long time. So why would this make you not want to go back to Arena? Just because it's just more exciting, or you just kind of got tired with Arena, or?
No, I mean I still like I've tried to play Arena again, but like playing Arena is Arena uses the standard cards, so all the cards in the standard year. And Arena is very limited by your hero powers, by what you can actually do. But in duels, one particular character can have two or three hero powers. I think the third one is coming next year. So you can choose, like, do I want to do this build or this build? And then from that hero power, you can choose treasures. You can have three treasures, and each treasure does something different. So it's like one hero is divided into two paths, right, by your
Mhm.
hero power. And from that hero power is divided into further four paths by the treasure that you use. And from that treasure is divided into what cards you're going to use to make the deck. So it's just so varied and so exciting. So that, I mean, as someone who's played Arena for the last 4 years, because I don't really play ranked matches that often, but I did play Arena because it felt more fair, more interesting, more fun. But this is just heads and tails above Arena.
Oh, okay. Now you said Arena's more fair, so would this be maybe for newer players, or should newer players play Arena first and then add into duels or jump into
Um,
duels?
I would say this is in Arena you'll learn how to play Hearthstone. This is more of like, okay, if you've played Arena, you're like, I want to do something fun. This is the fun, not really relaxing alternative to playing ranked mode, playing Battlegrounds, playing Arena.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is something I'm still debating because I'd like to stream more of this, but I'm doing Cyberpunk at the moment, so
Ah,
that is a
Cyberpunk.
quandary.
All right.
All right, and that brings our episode to a close. But before we go, just a quick reminder to check us out on Middle Age Gaming 2020 on Twitch, at Middle Age Gaming on Instagram, Gaming Age on Twitter, Middle Age Gaming 2020 on Facebook. And as always, we'd love to hear from you directly by emailing us at middleagegaming2020 at gmail.com.
Yes, and we're always looking for feedback on our content, as well as suggestions on where you'd like us to take new content. So don't be shy, give us a holler, and with that, we will bid you adieu until the next show.
All right, thank you for watching. Stay tuned to for after the show, as Adam mentioned, because we will be talking about our finalist, the game for this year that you should probably buy on a Christmas sale and keep it around for 2021.